Good afternoon. We are live from London for the launch of the IBTM report into global destination marketing communication. My name is Robert Wright, and it's my job today to help guide the conversation with our expert panel, who I'm going to introduce to you shortly. Before I begin, I was just reminded of something last night, where across the UK we held a moment of remembrance and reflection. And I thought I couldn't really begin today's session without recognising those whose lives have been so terribly affected by this awful pandemic. But also to thank all of those people, especially our doctors, nurses, care workers, health professionals, scientists, and so many other people who have sacrificed so much to keep us all safe over the past year. And of course, it's very easy to forget the incredible work that our own business events community has done to continue to do every single day to help support the vulnerable and to help fight this pandemic. From suppliers producing face masks and hand sanitizers, to hotels providing essential accommodation for key workers and their families, to providing shelter for the homeless, and venues who've transformed themselves in just a matter of days into major hospitals, and then do the same to become life-saving vaccination centres. What you have all achieved and contributed is truly, truly amazing. And so on behalf of all of us here today, I just wanted to say thank you very much for everything you've done. And we really, really do appreciate it. We really value everything what you do. So let's begin. Let's first welcome our guests. I am so excited, but I'm also a little sad because it's been so long since I've been able to see these people in person, give them all a big hug. So joining us from Washington DC, we have the Vice President of Convention Sales and Services at Destination DC, Melissa Riley. From the beautiful city of Barcelona, my very dear friend, the Director of Barcelona Convention Bureau, Christoph Pesmar. From here in London, the Director of Tourism, Convention and Major Events at London Department is Tracy Halliwell, MBE. From one of my favourite cities, in glorious Edinburgh, the Head of Business Events at Visit Scotland, Neil Brownlee. And finally, our report partner and host for today's event, the Portfolio Director at WTM and IBTM Events, Mr. Claude Blanc. Welcome everyone. How are we?
Very well.
Are we good?
Thank you. We're good, yes.
It's a relative question these days.
So we're going to talk about this report, or we're going to pull out a couple of kind of highlights from this report. But before we start, I think it'd be really useful for people to maybe hear a little bit from you about how you see the situation currently, what's going on in your world. And before we do that, we want everyone to know we've got over 470 people joining us today on our IBTM Connect platform, which is fantastic. We have a question facility, which I think is to the right of your screen. You can click on that and ask any questions. So please take the opportunity to ask as many questions as you can to our amazing people. And maybe start off, just let us know, just click in that comment box and let us know where you're dialing in from, where you are in the world, what's going on with you. Just let us know how you are and just say hi. So let's kick off and just talk a little bit about kind of how things are. And I'm going to start with being close to home. Tracy, I'm going to start with you. How, not looking back, let's look at kind of now and forward. How's things in London in the business events world?
We are in a process, I guess, of being very cautiously optimistic right now. So we have a roadmap. which I think the industry is just so happy to have some sort of sightline of where they can, start looking ahead. So we are hopeful that mid-June we'll be able to start the events going again. It's going to be a domestic market to start with, we know that, and probably not an international one till the end of the year into next year. But we've certainly, since that roadmap was announced, a month or so ago, we have certainly seen a huge spike in inquiries. So the really great thing is that there is interest out there, and that there is this pent-up demand that people want to get meetings going. So from our point of view, from the Convention Bureau and our venues and partners, we certainly have seen interest. And so fingers crossed, if everything carries on according to plan with our vaccination program and everything else, that's putting us in good stead. And I think business will slowly start to return. And on the other side of the coin, a lot of our venues have been preparing. They haven't wasted time. So we're well set in terms of, the omni-channel meetings and events of the future, much more so than we ever were. So we've got some good plans, and we're cautiously optimistic. That's my term.
Christoph, how about Barcelona?
So hello everyone, and thanks for letting me be part of this wonderful panel with all my friends. The situation in Barcelona is, I would say, also quite optimistic. We have two important events scheduled for June, the ISE and the Mobile World Congress. ISE just had announced that due to the travel restrictions, they will do like 4 smaller events in 4 different cities, one of them in London. And but the good thing and the good news is that they will deliver a small event. And Mobile World Congress made a lot of statements about that they want to run the event, not exactly how we were used to. It's of course not possible. We have to monitor a little bit the situation. And we are getting some requests for the autumn, and especially for the coming year. So the business is still there. And from our side, we are also working a lot on lobbying on the MICE meetings industry with our government. But nowadays, we have the restriction that we cannot organize congresses and events nowadays. But next week, we have a meeting with our government, and I'm really optimistic that we will solve the situation.
Wonderful. And how about stateside, Melissa? What's going on in Washington and the US generally?
Absolutely. Well, we're seeing similar trends as my European counterparts mentioned. Much like Tracy, we're cautiously optimistic. Our new administration and their revised vaccine rollout has approved a lot of positivity towards the future, which we're really excited about. Within the United States, much like in Europe, every state has a different set of rules and guidelines, but we're using the models of cities like Orlando and Indianapolis and many of our Texas counterparts, as well as Singapore, to help prove that meetings and congresses can actually provide a safe and controlled environment. So much like Tracy, also, we're seeing demand return. It is regional in nature at this moment, but we are hopeful that that global landscape will return, and IBTM will be certainly the catalyst for that in the fall, we hope.
Right. And how about the glorious nation of Scotland, Neil?
Thank you, Robert, and hello everyone. I can't wait to see everyone on the screen here, but also everyone online. I can't wait till we can see each other in three dimensions, perhaps later in the year at some point. I'm having very similar experiences to Tracy in particular, but also I think Christoph and Melissa. That's how it is with the global pandemic. We have the same problems. But I think there is absolutely optimism about the rest of the year, or not the rest, at least 6 months from now. I don't know who's buzzing, if we can all go on mute, folks, if you're not, unless it's me. I think with pilot events, well, as Tracy said, the roadmap, that was tremendously helpful in the UK. Tracy and I share the same government in London for the main stuff. But tourism, my job, is devolved to the Scottish government. So there's actually 2 roadmaps. But I think the sense of relief in the United Kingdom and all the nations has been huge. That the roadmap sounds realistic. It sounds fairly smart. But also the lead times of business events means that we know we can't really influence the next few weeks or few months, but we can at least try and be ready for it. In terms of pilot events as well, we realized that we actually have had 3 massive pilot business events running here for the last 2 months, and that's the vaccination programs in our 3 biggest conference centers. So spent weeks worrying about what a pilot event might look like, and of course we were processing hundreds of thousands of people a week through our conference center. So that was a good way to demonstrate to government that we can be trusted to do things safely. But I think there's optimism. I think the next few months, as I said, we can't control, but from September onwards, even before that, we'd expect local Scottish meetings and hopefully UK-wide meetings. I do think international's probably into 2022, sadly.
And Claude, obviously, I mean, trade shows have been, terribly affected during the past 12 months. How do you see this affecting IBTM, WTM portfolio going forward? What's the plan, if there is one? I'm sure.
Well, of course, we have some plan. We believe that 2021 will definitely be the year of the reopening of in-person trade shows. And, at the moment in Miami, we are running the Jewelry International Show. And the next one, the big one for our portfolio will be the ATM in Dubai on the 16th of May, which would be the first global travel trade show reopening in person. So we are quite optimistic. And certainly at the end of the year, we intend to run live WTM London and IBTM World in Barcelona. So some optimism in the company.
Excellent. Okay, thank you all for that. So let's get into talking about the report. So just to give this some context, we went out to 224 global destination marketing organizations, CVBs. These were city, regional, and national marketing organizations. And we asked them a series of questions between kind of the early part of December 2020, which seems like a lifetime ago now, around to about the end of January. And we asked a series of questions about what they'd been doing in terms of their marketing activity during the past 12 months, but also very importantly, what they were planning to do going forward. And we pulled that into a report, and that report will be available to download for free at the end of this session. And as I said earlier, we partnered with our friends at IBTM for that. And one of the things that we pulled out was some of those challenges facing destinations in terms of when to plan that kind of recovery. When do we plan restart, if you like? And I'm sure a lot of you saw that Visit Scotland, actually, Neil and his team launched a new campaign on Monday. And I'm just really interested to learn a little bit more and get Neil to tell you a little bit more about that. But before I ask him to do that, I'm just going to show you if my technology works. I'm just going to show you their little launch video that they launched on Monday, and then we'll come back and join Neil.
Many journeys begin in Scotland. Inspired by our pioneering spirit, our commitment to equality, and our constant strive in the pursuit for better. This is where minds meet. And the journey to change begins. When we bring scientists together, we find cures. When we bring world leaders together, we fight the climate crisis. When we bring big thinkers together, they arrive at the answer. And now, it's your turn. Our stages are set. Platforms for big ideas and new approaches. Our speakers amplify the opinions of brilliant minds. Our spotlights focus on the world's most pressing issues. Together, we have the power to change the world. And this is the place to make it happen. When the time is right, Start the journey to change in Scotland.
Okay, so Neil, those iconic Scottish venues that were in there, Edinburgh Castle and SEC, numerous others I recognise. That was live mapping on there, right? There wasn't CGI.
Yeah, that was actually real projections. So it wasn't CGI or anything. It was myself and Rory Archibald, who some of your viewers might know. We were running around the countryside at night the last few weeks, projecting for real on the side of these buildings. No, we had a company to do it, but yeah, they're real projections. And the idea was behind Journey to Change, and I won't take too long on this, but it was before COVID. It was all about that repositioning of business events as being more than only part of the tourism economy. And we had different labels for it, but we decided that the Journey to Change, which relies on the fact that business events are very long lead time. So we decided in the last year not to wait for recovery to start, because by then it would be too late. And also the way it was working for a lot of governments, and I work for a national government, the Government of Scotland, we had a lot of messaging ready to go for the consumer markets, the leisure markets, but we weren't allowed to go with it because it was just the wrong message. We didn't want people to come to Scotland now. So to be honest, the last few weeks have been quite fun, making clear that we're not saying to people come to Scotland right now, next week, or even in the next few months, because as we've learned, we can't say that. But it's based on when the time is right, and also the fact that this is about 22, 23, all the way out to 2030 and beyond. And the journey element is about using business events as policy platforms, as milestones on the way to delivering Scotland's ambitions, or policy delivery. And that's where we came up with a video that, hopefully is unlike any other business events destination. It doesn't show the inside of a conference center. It doesn't show quite a lot of the cliches, which I think a lot of people will. There's a bit of a sea of sameness at the trade shows, and we thought this long before the pandemic. So hopefully we've broken the mold a wee bit, but we had to get out this week, or Monday, as Robert said, because we have the Scottish election starting. So something called PERTA starts tomorrow. And that would have meant we had to wait until the end of May, by which time all my wonderful friends and competitors in Europe would have come out of the stocks with their own campaign. So there was a lot of pressure to get it out there, but we're very pleased with it. But it does relate to what we're talking about today, and I'll let the others come in terms of repositioning what business events are for, but also why we might want to keep going to trade shows, because the two are very much connected when it comes to lobbying for advocacy for money and everything else. So that's a new campaign. I'm glad somebody liked it. I saw a nice comment, so thank you.
There's some nice comments coming in about that, and actually there's a few comments around the timing of these kind of restart, recovery, relaunch, however you want to describe them, campaigns. How do you, and how have you been, trying to kind of stay connected with those audiences, and during when destinations are effectively closed, and when do you know when is the right time to start going back out to the market? Melissa?
Yeah, from a US standpoint, I think we never stopped communicating with our customers. It was just the messaging at the right time in the right place. And I think we're getting back to, a place where we're looking towards the future. Neil, that video is gorgeous. And, our US model for funding, unfortunately, is one that is mainly dependent on bed tax. And when nobody's staying in the city and nobody's traveling, we don't have money to produce, beautiful videos and campaigns such as Visit Scotland. So what we have had to do within the United States and Washington, D.C. in particular, is really focus our efforts on using assets that we've already developed and matured, and we've repurposed them. And we've used partnerships to help amplify that narrative about having safe and secure meetings in Washington, D.C. and in the United States, and quite frankly, around the world. And we've used social media. We've used platforms that don't necessarily, cost a lot of money. But I think to Neil's point about advocacy, if there's one positive thing that's come out of this, it is that our governments and our local residents alike have all realized the economic impact that business events bring to our destination landscapes in a positive way. And I think that's one of the things that we can continue to message out long after this is it isn't just dates, rates, and space, or it isn't just, people convening and networking and having a great time. It's an economic generator for our destinations.
Tracy, how about from a London perspective? Because I think you've done some similar things in the last few weeks. Oh, Tracy, you're on mute. You are on mute.
Yes, sorry.
That's a pound in the jar.
A lot of, I think a lot of our focus is going to be around confidence building. We're a big city, and there is a sense of people not necessarily wanting to run back to big cities. So I think a lot of our work for now is going to be around how do we encourage our local market back and Londoners to actually hold meetings and come back to the office and get into a fairly normal way of life, and then expand that out. And use some of those leisure marketing messages actually in the business tourism world. So how can we resell the culture and history of our city? How can we push the fact that when you come to a meeting, it's not just about sitting in a meeting room and a conference room. It is about exploring and enjoying a destination. So I think some of our work will be around that. But as with Neil, I mean, meetings are all about bringing people together, and it is about changing people's mind. It is about changing the world. So that intellectual capital element will absolutely be part of it. And then I think a third element we'll be looking to expand upon is the whole green and sustainable messaging. I think we've all come out of this pandemic with a deeper sense of, what are we doing to the planet and how can we make that better? So London is a very sustainable destination, and I think we need to showcase that more. So we'll be talking about that as well.
That was something I was going to come on to after the launch of Scotland's campaign, and how the kind of sustainability, but also that sort of being a good global citizen from a destinations perspective, how important do you think that's going to be going forward, not just to do that, but also to actually attract business coming in? Throwing that open.
I think if I can chime in, I think sustainability in both its traditional sense, but more so from a legacy component, is going to be on the forefront of conversations, because I think it does twofold. It's a way to leave a positive impact on destinations, but it's a way for our local communities to understand again the impact of business events and how it can affect them in a positive manner. Customizing programs where the mission of an organization or of an association aligns with perhaps an underserved community or an underserved initiative within our destinations, I think is really going to do a lot to, again, bring awareness about hospitality and business events from a local standpoint and continue that advocacy message in a positive way.
Yes, I think I agree completely with Melissa, and I think a lot of this transition out of, hopefully what we think is out of the pandemic, it is that once in a generation opportunity to demonstrate the low-hanging fruit that is business events to governments and reach local authorities, because our tourism visitor economy outcomes or impact, they are huge. And I've spent 2 or 3 years at Visit Scotland insisting that we weren't really part of tourism, and it got me absolutely nowhere. It won me no friends. And so I've been backpedaling on this quite a lot. And in the launch of our campaign, I was at pains to say to the hoteliers online and everyone else that, yes, of course, we are part of the visitor economy tourism. We generate millions of bed nights, but that's just one ace in the pack of business events. But we need to come out of this pandemic being able to demonstrate the sustainability effects of sending business events of all sizes to different parts of the country, because I'm at the country level. But also it's not rocket science either. It's actually fundamentally straightforward to have a bunch of experts in a wonderful city like Barcelona or London or Washington, DC, that somebody somewhere knows how to make the most of them being in the town. And that's the big missing link, I think, for many destinations. But it is, as Tracy alluded to, it is some of that consumer messaging. It is some of that Scotland's still here type thing. We all want to get back together as human beings. But the Journey to Change idea in business events is a long-term thing, and hopefully it's as relevant in September if we'd lost it then, or next year it was on Monday. I don't know if Christoph has anything there.
Yes, if I may jump in as well. So first of all, I think it's also a matter of communication, because I'm completely convinced that sustainability is there since quite a long time. So, but we might not have talked so much about it. But for example, I remember the last IBTM that everyone was really looking forward to place the stands on a sustainable matter and to really adapt all the presence with taking into account the sustainability. And for example, Mobile World Congress, since quite a few years, has a donation room. It's called, the project is donation room. That means that when the show is over, that all the exhibitors, all this stuff that they might leave, that they give it to this donation room, and then this is distributed on different sides of the city to people that might need all this stuff. And the important point, what Melissa just mentioned, is the legacy as well. As you all might remember, Barcelona was on the top hotspot, always with this mass tourism story. Every time when they were talking about mass tourism, Barcelona was there. And we are trying as a convention bureau, as the Barcelona Convention Bureau right now, to work a little bit on this. It's quite clear that our industry and our business is this quality tourism that everyone is looking for. But we also never explained this to the local community, and I think it's now the right moment. So we are working a lot with different clusters in the city. We're trying to find with whom we can collaborate, create projects that might be really interesting for clients and also for the local community. You might know, we were so successful in the past, having so many events here. People came, consumed the city convention center, and then they left, and nobody explained to the locals what the benefit is, apart from the economic impact. But on education, we are having all these medical congresses in the city. So there's a lot of, we have a great medical community in Barcelona. So to merge this, to explain this, to give students the opportunity, etc. There's so many things, and I think we should really focus on this nowadays and for the future as well, and communicate it very well.
And Claude, just from a GEM perspective, I mean, presumably this is a major thing for you in terms of providing that platform and showcase for a lot of those destinations.
It is indeed. Sustainability has always been part of Reed exhibition DNA. 20 years ago, we launched WTM Responsible Tourism, which is actually one of the pillars of our portfolio value proposition at the moment, and we offer a great platform to all the international initiatives around the sustainability, responsible tourism. And we have recently launched a sustainability charter for events, which is guided by the UN Sustainable Development Goals, and are working hard with our operations team to make our trade show more sustainable. We have any guides of sustainability guidelines for our exhibitors.
Okay, thank you. I mentioned Laura from the IBTM Connect team is doing a great job behind the scenes, feeding through lots of questions. There's quite a lot of questions coming through, so I think I'm just going to keep those questions coming in first of all. But I'm just going to pause and maybe grab a couple of these questions and throw these out to our guests. So one thing that actually came up in the report, which is quite important, is do you think there'll be more competition in the future as more destinations compete for fewer events when they are open?
I'm happy to kick off, or Neil. So I think absolutely. I think even before the global pandemic, competition had become more fierce than it ever had before, between subvention, the rise of second, third tier destinations to the landscape against kind of larger cities had become an issue. And I think the one thing that COVID contributes to this is the remix now of future planning, because customers that were set to meet in our destinations are now revamping their entire future rotations. And that where we might have been, a prospect for a particular year has now been completely disrupted. And so we're looking at perhaps, further out impact. That journey is going to be a little bit longer than we had expected in some cases. But I think subvention is going to be a much bigger conversation than it had before as well, and how we can support in a unique way from our particular destinations, such as legacy and intellectual capitals.
Neil, how about you?
Yes, just to add to Melissa, I think it is about the destination being able to offer more to the client in terms of delivering their objectives, or as Greg Talley said, you're joining the nodes, connecting the nodes, and helping an organization with the leave behind, or future building, as Sheriff was discussing it with me on Monday in our launch. It's about showing the client event, but also the host city or destination, how they can actually get the most out of it, rather than just jetting in and jetting out, which we know is not what a business event is, but unfortunately that's the perception. And I think it's also about being able to connect interested parties on the ground, who will often be, in some cases, fellow government agency or fellow public agency, like the enterprise agencies. They have their own KPIs. They don't need somebody like me coming to them, pestering them, saying, you've got to get involved in this conference because this is important to your sector. For a start, they should be coming to me saying, Neil, can we bring this conference to Scotland? We have to invert the whole thing. And I think that'll help with the competition between cities. And I think that a lot of the tier 2 and tier 3 cities, we're seeing that come in terms of what are viable as office spaces as well, with that whole discussion. So the principal original massive cities, they think they might have to give way to cities that in the past you'd have to commute from, or it wasn't viable to be based in to work for company X, Y, or Z. Whereas that's all changed as we get used to the working from home thing, depending which way that goes.
One question I had to maybe talk about later, but I'll throw it in now because I think it's relevant to this. Is, I mean, we've all known each other for too long to mention, and we all get on well, but particularly you guys, or you four guys in particular, Christoph, Tracy, Melissa, Neil, you all compete. You all compete for business. Scotland competes with Washington. Washington competes with London. London with Barcelona. But it's still always amazing how you're very happy to collaborate, to talk about stuff and share information and knowledge. And is that that kind of competitive collaboration important to you? Is that something that you find useful?
For sure. Maybe I start. For sure, we are practicing this quite a long time. We made this in very good times with Vienna. I'm in a really nice group since the pandemic started, with other cities of Europe, with convention bureaus sharing every week knowledge and the situation. And this industry is very competitive, but also very collaborative. And every time, everyone from us needs something from another one. And if including some important information, we usually share it. And I'm completely convinced that we can come out of this crisis all together and collaborating and working together, because business, I'm sure there will be enough for the future. So I completely believe in collaboration between competitors and every one of us in this industry.
Tracy?
Yeah, I think it's also a case of we're all very passionate about this industry, and we're all very well aware of how tenuous the meetings industry can be. And I think this crisis has shown that exactly. There was a time where we had to fight to be a part of people's marketing budgets. Were live events the thing to do, or did you spend your money on advertising and media? And And I think we've all grown up through a phase where actually it's about the meeting, and the better we can get live meetings to be, the more of them there will be, and the more there will be to go around. So if we can collaborate with each other and actually, increase the value of our industry overall, if we can get better at delivering to this industry, the industry is only going to get better, and we're all going to benefit from that. And we've also, I think all of us are probably great advocates of events underpin economic growth. So it's not just about the meeting itself, it's about what it brings to the destinations, how it enhances cities and countries. And that gives us all benefits on wider things like foreign direct investment and, future growth. And so it's more than just, the sum of its parts. It's a huge industry, and I think we all feel part of that. And that's why we're all willing to collaborate and make it better. And all of these events do rotate. So if we can win it one year and give it to somebody else, the next year, we'll get it back again, ultimately. So it's all for the greater good.
No.
Trying to unmute. No, I agree completely. I think the competition we have with each other is very healthy, and I think if each other are successful, it sounds very glib, but if we're separately successful, it helps all of us. And actually being able to name drop places like Barcelona, Washington DC, and London alone is enough to remind my stakeholders that we are at the sort of top table, and we're not new to this. And I think that's why the industry is so relationship based, is because it can be quite startling for some of my Scottish stakeholders to see how close I am to other competitor destinations. The fact that we sort of move around in a sort of solid mass. I think it is because we have the same discussions, the same challenges, the same over-tourism debates, the same stuck in the tourism bucket conversations and frustrations. And I do think that this is the time for us to try and pull us forward. And I saw a comment from James there from the Iceberg. At what point might CVBs become a bit more integrated into sort of, what was it? I need to page down. Yeah. Business agency for the city. And I think the city convention bureaus can answer this better than me, but I think that's an element of what we're trying to do already, is to slightly get business events to climb out of the tourism bucket and be seen to be more than driving in bed nights and shoppers to the city. And again, that's getting perilously close to me saying we're not part of tourism again. But I think there is that sort of connection, and I'd love to hear from the cities what you think. Is that something you've been striving to do for years, or does it actually complement what you do quite well?
To answer your question, Neil, from the U.S. standpoint, and Washington, D.C. in particular, we do tend to be more aligned with our tourism entities and our leisure entities, because we do believe that a strong leisure destination does make a strong meetings destination at the end of the day. And I think we spoke at the top of the hour really about how we're adopting some of those leisure campaigns and using some of the messaging there to cross over into business events. And I think that certainly helps. And, I think to the point about our collaborative environment, I think we have existed this way for a long time pre-COVID. If you look at Best Cities or the Global Association Hub partnerships, I do believe that oftentimes in a messaging component, we're better together. And we have a stronger platform to message if we collaborate and use and amplify our voices that way. But it's also interesting to see what's come out of COVID. I believe it was Ottawa and The Hague started a partnership during COVID that was focused on enhancing each individual destination as a hybrid component to a bigger conference. So people could meet within, smaller groups in The Hague and Ottawa and perhaps cities like Washington. And I think those will only continue to grow and enhance our ability to talk about business events on a much larger scale in the future.
Okay. I'm going to go to another question, which is, how can destinations become risk partners for organisers of large-scale future events, given the collapse in traditional risk insurance relating to pandemic disruption? So I'm guessing that's all about how a destination can partner with a commercial organizer to either move or create a large-scale event. Tracy, I mean, you've got some good history of this with things like Tech Week and other stuff, haven't you?
Well, yeah, we've often taken the stance that if you can't win it, just build it, and it will, do it yourself. So Tech Week was a great collaboration that we did with an event company and a number of different sponsors, and so it wasn't about subventing or anything else. It was about facilitating a lot of people coming together and everybody sharing the risk. So that's one way of doing it. I think there is a whole underwriting thing here. If something's good for a destination, there may be something that you could persuade local authorities to underwrite events, maybe, so that if you don't get enough delegates, there's financial support from that angle. But I think the whole sponsorship elements. But I think sponsors actually are going to be different in the future. I think they're going to be looking at things like community engagement and the whole CSR rather than just getting their brand out there. So I think we've got to rethink what events do for the local destination, what partners are available that would want to come on board, and what can people get out of it. I know there's also, pressure on the insurance industry to change the way they work to hopefully, work with us and ensure some of these bigger events kind of going forward. So I think we'll find ways around it, and I think we'll work it through. But yeah, I think, partnership and creating things collaboratively is definitely a way forward.
Christoph, how about from your perspective?
More similar to what Tracy said. We have maybe the good example again. Always talking about the Mobile World Congress, but it is a flagship event. It's a great event, and the presence of this event and the agreements created projects like the Mobile World Capital. So this is worked out also by the city of Barcelona. So there's a lot of collaboration between the event organizers, the city itself, all the stakeholders, and creating projects around it. So it's key and it's essential for making these events happen.
Okay. One more question before we move on to some other bits. Speaking around intellectual capital, do you think that each destination should target specific fields and topics to attract international conferences? Do you find we would need to rely more and more on local ambassadors and key opinion leaders? And that plays quite well to a section in the report that actually talks about ambassador programs. And I think there was quite a high, I think it was around about 40% of destinations said they were looking to either enhance their existing ambassador programs or start new ones. So in terms of creating something around specific sectors, I'm guessing some of you, all of you do that currently, but Melissa, how about Washington?
Yes, absolutely. And we are one of the ones that has been enhancing our ambassador program during this time because of the question that you posed earlier about increased competition. We have to find a way to distinguish ourselves from other, most likely North American destinations that we compete against. And it's fierce. And we had really built out our intellectual capitals platform several years ago, but I will say that it has become more relevant now more than ever as a differentiator in the competitive landscape. We have a gentleman on our team who has just been absolutely dynamic in recruiting, not just specifically for opinion leaders within specific bids that we're going after, but creating a virtual bench of industry leaders and subject matter experts that can help elevate what Washington, D.C. might not be known for. We do exist beyond politics within, much like Christoph in the medical field, in Washington, D.C. is a thriving environment, and much like London, technology, which I know we're all thriving in. But that baseline of having supporters who are in the trenches within these particular industries does nothing but help position us better for those bids and those wins in the future.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think most cities or convention centers will target conferences aligned to their specific fields. It might not always be obvious to the man in the street, but I think the SEC in Glasgow and Aileen at Glasgow Convention Bureau, they've got a tremendous ambassador program. They absolutely will. And
Neil, I think we've lost the sound slightly.
We've lost you.
I think I might have hit my...
Again.
Oh, you were back and now you're gone.
It was auto-muting. That's not a good sign. Maybe I'm talking too much. I don't know what point I got cut off. But what I was saying is I think people like Aileen and Glasgow and Kathleen at the SEC, they always target like this. And great ambassador program in Glasgow, also in Dundee and Aberdeen. I think my job in Scottish Government or Visit Scotland is to help Scotland attract conferences and meetings that wouldn't otherwise typically be viable, whether that's with subvention or some kind of Scottish Government support or policy alignment. But I think it's often goes unnoticed, to Melissa's point, just how competitive and fierce the marketplace is to win an association congress, for example, that doesn't have a hosting fee, doesn't have any subvention requirement. It's still brutal to just try and secure what might look to be business as usual. So yeah, I think everyone does target like that, but that's why we're beginning to use the P word, policy, as being slightly higher up the cliff face. Policy is national level. It's the one we're going after.
Just on that, just maybe a wider question around that, because of what you've all faced in the last 12 months and the environment going forward. Do you see the role, the essential traditional role of a convention bureau having to change drastically?
May I start? I think we have to convert to be more consultant than convention bureau. We obviously will, if we have requests from clients and bids for congresses, we will work this out and we will be there and partnering and giving all the answers. But I think we are the touch point of our destination, or we should be the first touch point of the destination. And I think we have the knowledge. We know what happened here, what we put in place, what is our situation for the future. We know all the partners, and I think we could be really there in the role of a consultant to adapt and to give the information to the needs, to the new needs of our clients, and I think this is essential. The convention bureau as usual, I'm not sure if this will work for the future.
Tracy?
Yeah, I mean, I think we constantly evolve, and certainly in London, we're in a very, very different place now than we were when I first joined the Convention Bureau some 10 or so years ago. And yeah, we now facilitate things. We're great facilitators. We bring people together. We're not just venue finders anymore. We unlock cities and we make things happen. And in our case, we create events. If we want to highlight particular stories or themes or bits of our intellectual capital, we can create events and take those to market now. So Tech Week was one. We've got others potentially coming. So I think it's certainly today's day, we have to be agile and we have to be very different things to very different people. During COVID, we've had to be very much that mouthpiece and the virtual shop front. As it opens up, it's now about confidence building and all of those kind of things. So I think yeah, we can't sit still. We can never sit still. We always have to constantly look at what's around the corner, and our industry is ever changing, so we need to change with it. But I think there'll always be a place for a convention bureau because they're the ones that have this unbiased view and in-depth knowledge of a city that many event planners welcome, particularly on the international stage. They don't know the city as well as we do. If we're impartial, we can really point them in the right direction and save them a huge amount of time, effort and resource in most cases. So I think there's always going to be a place for us. But yeah, just changing with the times.
Okay.
Just quickly, can I jump in? I can't emphasize enough the importance to the National Convention Bureau, which is sort of what I am. I cannot emphasize enough the importance of the city convention bureaus. We simply could not do our job if the city convention bureaus didn't exist. We are here to add value, but the city convention bureaus are absolutely critical to the national messaging, because the knowledge, the relationships, it would be a disaster if, for whatever reason, I ended up with no convention bureaus in Scotland. We have 3 excellent convention bureaus. We work with them on a parallel level. They don't report to me, I don't report to them, but it works perfectly. But we just couldn't be as successful as we are without the convention bureaus. They're fundamental. So any viewers watching, maybe with some grumbles about the performance of convention bureaus, just make sure you keep it. That's all I'd say. Rename it, relabel it, have a look at the KPIs, but keep it.
I want to move on, or kind of move back into some other things that came out of the report. We've got about 10 minutes or so left. We've got some other questions to get through. There was quite a high percentage of destinations, and I think this is one of the things that we found quite surprising, that said, obviously during the year just gone, very small percentage actually attended trade shows or used trade shows as a way to market their destination. But actually going forward, looking at 2021 and beyond, there was quite a high percentage, certainly over 50-something%, that said they were going to actively use trade shows as a way to not just to market their destination and to do business, but also to rebuild their network. Is that something from the destination's point of view that you're seeing? And maybe before we talk to you, just get Claude's view on, do you see the role of trade shows being more crucial in the coming year or coming years to support destinations in sort of getting themselves back up and running?
Yeah, absolutely. This was a good surprise for us to see that there is definitely a need to get back quickly to attending trade shows. And as you said, not only for business connection, but to develop longer term strategies. And I think, of course, we are ready for that. We believe that the recovery will be the recovery of in-person trade shows as well. So, of course, we have to reinvent our shape, our value proposition. And we have been able to pivot last year and run some successful virtual trade shows. And as you know, the future is hybrid. And we have developed quite successful business model of hybrid trade shows. And this is something which could be very useful for the destination, not only on their marketing activity, but on the global management aspect.
I'm happy to piggyback off of that. And just for the record, I would give nothing to stand in really thin carpet in high heels on a trade show floor for 8 hours a day right now. Bring it back. But I really do think that where and who we participate with in the future is going to change, as well as I think perhaps the business model of trade shows might change somewhat, where it becomes very focused on the appointments at hand, maybe not so much the flashy booths and the large expenditures on design. For the future, I really do think for the short term that it will be far more focused on one-on-one meetings and making sure that the ROI is there. You know, as a destination that is going to focus or be challenged by budgets, not just in 21, but likely in 22 and 23 as we grow out of this pandemic. You know, we have to be very intentional on who we partner with and who we want to invest our limited dollars with. And so there has to be a proven return. We won't participate in shows where, as Neela was mentioning in a previous conversation, where we're just there because Canada is there or because our competitors in North America are there. We really have to have a proven success record with that organizer to ensure our participation in the future.
Yeah, I agree with you. I think ROI is critical, and this is definitely our obsession: make our exhibitors happy with a positive ROI, and we are ready for that.
And do you also think the reason for being at a trade show is going to be different in the short to medium term? Again, one of the things that came out of the report was a lot of people saying that their network and their pipeline had been very disrupted and displaced, with people on long-term furlough, people changing jobs, people moving departments, moving out the industry, getting made redundant, and therefore they're having to almost reinvent their whole database and pipeline. Would trade shows potentially provide that kind of environment to do that? Christoph?
I'm not sure. I'm obviously this is the moment that we can meet. We can see what was going on and what is the picture after this crisis. But I have to speak from my heart. Obviously, we expect a different way of trade shows, but isn't it the moment of the year that we all meet and that we come together and we see our clients, but we see all our friends, and it's like Barcelona, IBTM, the event of our industry, and I'm really missing it so much and so much looking forward. It is, I think, the biggest and most read date in my calendar, and I would be really happy. But to be honest, I'm sure that it has to look different and it will look different. But again, from my heart point of view, it should be as more human and most close as possible.
Christoph, you're right. I mean, but 2021 will be a very special year for us.
Yeah, of course.
World will be back, but with the COVID still here. So our main priority will definitely be this year the well-being of our exhibitors and visitors. So, of course, we have some constraint, and health and safety is in our top priority. But part of that, it may be a smaller event, but and a more regional one. But there is such an appetite from all over the world to come to IBTM World in Barcelona and to WTM in London, that because it is still far at the end of the year, we are quite optimistic in our ability to recreate this excitement and dynamism for business and for pleasure.
I'm a dreamer, Claude. I'm a dreamer. I have my feet on the floor and I'm completely conscious of what's going on and what will happen this year and maybe 2 more, 3 more years. But this doesn't kill our industry. That you will have to put minimum 1 or 2 extra hours on the agenda only for hugging every one of us. That's for sure. I don't know when, but let's dream also, not only be too realistic.
I'm definitely agreeing with that. I'm conscious that we're rapidly running out of time. I just wanted to say later today we'll be launching a second survey, almost identical to the one we did, the first one we did back in December, because we want to get some kind of benchmarks on what's changed over the last 3 or 4 months. So please look out for that. It's a very quick survey, take about 3 minutes to complete. Very, very simple. But you know, the more people that can complete that, the more information we can share and hopefully help get us all back up and running. Laura's still working really hard, sifting through some questions. We've got some other questions coming through, but I'm just conscious that we are rapidly running out of time. So I'm sorry if we don't get to all of your questions. Just as we kind of close up, in terms of the report, which, as I said, is going to be available for download shortly. just ask each of you, what did the report, was there anything in the report or overall, what did the report kind of say to you? What was that one thing or general thing that you kind of saw and thought, oh, that's interesting, or this kind of tells me that kind of, Neil, let's start with you.
Okay, I think I think it's an excellent report, and thank you to IBTM for working, Davis Tanner, on it. I think it's a very important tool for the industry at a critical time. I think, like many reports we've had over the last year, it sort of confirms what we all thought, but it's good to have it in one place. As I said at the beginning, the global pandemic, we're often sharing the same scenarios, nightmares, and predicaments, but it's good to have it documented. But I also think that looking at it as we saw a draft copy perhaps a month ago or 3 weeks ago, there is that sense of, oh my God, this would be different answers now than it was in November when we did it. Hence, another one is coming out. And I think when you look at the charts on it and the pie charts as to what we're going to do when, we have to sort of work in that 3-month window just now, because I think those I'm going to do this, that, and the other by March. Well, we all know it's not March. It's going to be maybe June, or hopefully September. Hopefully not September. So I think it's still a moving feast, but I think it's reassuring that everyone is sort of agreeing on the broad things. We plan to be at the big trade shows, and that's our plan for 2021. I just also don't think that the trade show of the future, we won't see that in 21 or 22. I think it'll take a couple of years to shake this all down so that we can actually identify and say, well, that's what the trade show looks like now compared to 2019. I think 21 and 22, there's going to be a lot of jostling for position, because let's face it, a lot of our people we want to go and see might not be able to get there for whatever reason, and vice versa. So, but we're in for the long ride here, and we're going to be at all the trade shows if we can, and if people can make it. But thanks for the report.
Okay. Go around in the circle, Melissa.
Absolutely. I completely agree with Neil. And I feel like I said at the beginning, there is positivity for the first time. And one of the things that I think the report did emphasize was that every destination, whether it's funding or government backing and entities, has a different structure and a different model. And to the earlier point of collaboration, let's use and lean on each other. So who's been able to transition and have an audience with their government? Who's been able to move to the next phase of reopening? And let's lean on each other and share these best practices, because at the end of the day, if we can come through this, as a stronger industry by partnering and moving the conversation in the right direction, I think we're all better off at the end of the day. So depending on whatever your model looks like, learn from those that have gone before you, and use those individuals and those destinations to help your individual location as well, and have challenged the conversation, challenge those in your local government, and really push them. Obviously, safety and security is the #1 priority, but I think immediately thereafter, we need to reopen, and we're on the right path now.
Right. Tracy, last word from you.
Yeah, I don't have a huge amount to add. I think it was interesting to see, as everybody said, that we were all in the same boat. We've all followed a very, very similar path through what we've done and what we're planning to do. And I think something we're all going to be moving forward is very much more agile. We don't all have a budget now that's in stone for the rest of the year. I think a lot of us are facing severe budget, shortbacks or cutbacks. So we have to be very careful about what we do, how we do it, when we do it. And I think we're now planning on a quarterly basis, perhaps, rather than an annual basis. So we do all need to work with IBTM and the other trade shows and everybody else to see how we can make that work. But I'm sure that collectively we can. And, I think ROI of shows is very important. So I think that business meetings bit is key. And much as I'd love to go and see everybody at the shows, they won't let me go if that's just all I'm going for. Sadly.
Christoph.
Yeah, there's not so much to add from my side. We will go through a learning process as well, and we will see a lot of best practices in the future. And it will be helpful for all of us. Again, with this collaboration I was mentioning before, where we can see that things are done very well. So maybe we all can learn, because I think this pandemic has shown us that we are still so much space to learn and to find new ways of doing. And for me, it's also very important, and it's more here related to Spain and maybe Catalonia, that I'm still missing this recognition of this meetings industry. We are still inside this big world of tourism, but and we are fighting. We had last week an event. It was called backtoevents.org. We made a test event. We wanted to demonstrate to our government that events are safe, but we need to do this more and more. That we come to the day that this industry is recognized not only for the economic impact, for all these other benefits we were mentioning before.
And Claude, last word.
Yeah, so my main learning from this research is that there is absolutely a need for destination of all kinds to take a lead in promoting business events as a way to drive the wider economic and social recovery. And IBTM will be a catalyst of this recovery. Not only IBTM World in December in Barcelona, of course, which is the event of the industry, but we will announce next week a new event under IBTM portfolio. So please stay tuned, and you will know more next week.
Thank you, Claude. So that's pretty much it from me and from today's session. Just to say again that the report is going to be available for download now. You can go to itstime.world. That's itstime, one word, .world, and there'll be a link available to you later on. If we didn't get to answer your questions, I'm sorry, but I think what we're going to plan to do is to collate all of those and create a little FAQ that we can share out in the next couple of weeks. So really, it's just for me to thank all of our guests. That's Melissa Riley, Christophe Tesmar, Tracy Halliwell, Neil Brownlee, and Claude Blanc. A big thank you also to Laura and Ellie from the IBTM team for doing all that hard work behind the scenes. Thanks also to Sue Liz at the Davis Tanner team for working on the survey and the report. And finally, thank you all for being here. Stay safe, and we will hopefully see you in Barcelona, if not before, but certainly Barcelona later in the year in November, because otherwise Christophe is not going to be a happy man. And actually,
No.
Christophe can buy all of us a drink in Barcelona.
You're all invited.
Okay. Thanks, everyone. Take care.
Thank you, everyone. Bye-bye.
Thank you.
Bye for now.